Hey everybody, it's Brett with Indie Comics Dispatch and broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep within the Milky Way galaxy. This is broadcast from the Dispatch.
If you got a story and you want the world to know it, if you think you ready and you ain't afraid to show it, throw your hands up high, yeah, we might stand out. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. We always representing cause that's what it's all about. And if you love some indie comics, let me hear you shout. Just stay tuned, what's the story? Had to get that every time a brand new indie comic from the Dispatch.
Good evening. Welcome to another Thursday night of broadcast from the Dispatch. I'm Brett. I'm your host, and I'm honored to be here this evening. Have a very special guest. We're doing the show format slightly different. It works out perfectly to try. I've been wanting to try this out for a while. Tonight worked out perfectly to do that. So we'll get to our first guest in just a minute, but stick around. Also, second half of the show, we're going to have a panel discussion about recent indie comic news items. So stick around for that too after the interview. First off, a couple of quick announcements. I get emails all the time. Hey, do you want to review our book? And yeah, we do. We totally do. But here's how I want to do it. I want you to go to our website. I want you to go to contact us, submit, and there on that page, you can easily submit a book for review or your press release. Let me tell you, if you're out there, you're an indie comic creator, learn to do a press release. It's going to get you a lot farther. It's going to get you a lot of press, and it's going to really help you out. We'll post, we may edit it down or rearrange some stuff, but we'll post your indie comic press release. No questions asked, mostly. So if you have something, send it there. And let us spread the news for you. Or if you have a book you want reviewed, don't just blindly email me. We have a whole process. I appreciate all the emails we get, but there's a process uploaded there. It makes it easier for our reviewers to get to your books. And yeah, that's my main announcement for tonight. And so without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and intro our guest for this evening. Dr. Sheena C. Howard is a professor of communication. She's an award-winning author, filmmaker, and scholar. In 2014, Sheena became the first Black woman to win an Eisner Award for her book, Black Comics, Politics of Race and Representation. She's also the author of several critically acclaimed books and comic books on a range of topics. Sheena is a writer, an image activist, with a passion for telling stories through various mediums that encourage audiences to consider narratives that are different than their own. In 2014, Sheena published Black Queer Identity Matrix and Critical Articulations of Race, Gender, and Sexual Orientation. Sheena is the author-editor of the award-winning book Encyclopedia of Black Comics and the co-writer of the comic book Superb, about a teenage superhero with Down syndrome. In 2016, through her company Nerdworks LLC, Sheena directed, produced, and wrote the documentary Remixing Colorblind, which explores the ways the educational system shapes our perception of race and others. Dr. Howard, welcome.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here, and yeah, can't wait to get going.
Great. Well, thank you again for being here tonight. We had talked last year because you have literally written the book on Black comics and representation in comics. And so we tried to get you here last year. Schedules didn't work out. So I was so happy when I approached you this year that it worked out a little bit better. Huge fan of yours. I think I have almost all your books.
Awesome.
So yeah. So I'm excited to have you here. Tell us more about yourself and what drew you into the world of comics in particular.
Yeah, so for me, my story into comics is a little bit different. I got into comics when I was doing my dissertation at Howard University in 2010. That's when I graduated Howard. But at 23 years old, I was in a PhD program, super young, with a bunch of adults who just knew what they wanted to write their dissertation on and knew what they wanted to talk about. And here I am, 23-year-olds. As a 23-year-old, I didn't have a clue. But at the time, I was reading the Boondocks comic strip. and I really liked it. So I said, hey, I want to do this work on representation around race and gender and how the media impacts us and the way we think about different types of people. So I did my dissertation on the Boondocks comic strip, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had no idea about that. So that's pretty amazing. So let's just dive kind of right in. Sometimes I'll get asked, and if you're out there watching, I'm the wrong person to ask this question to for a number of reasons. But we're a big supporter of Black comics and Black artists at the Dispatch, and so sometimes somebody will go like, why are Black comics important? Why Black comics? Can't it all just be comics?
Yeah.
So what would you say to those people?
Well, like anything, and I don't want to say just America, but the world, the stories of African Americans have been ignored. They've been told from the perspective of white people, right? Our representation in media has been distorted and harmful, and created negative stereotypes about us that are very impactful in the way that we interact in the world. And so studying Black comics is just another aspect of society that we can say, hey, we can use this medium to document Black culture and Black history, preserve Black culture and Black history, because documenting Black comics and the history of Black comics is where it all started for me. And then comics is an amazing medium to talk about the history of America and Black people in America. So I think that's why it's important to talk about and study Black comics. And also there's a lot of work to be done to recognize the Black people in the comics industry historically. And so, yeah, it's just like doing the work that we do in every other sector of society to kind of redress and address racism.
Awesome. So let's talk a minute then about your book, the Encyclopedia of Black Comics.
Yeah.
Tell everybody a little bit about that. Where you got the idea? What was the qualification for making it into that? I love just I have a daughter, Maya, who's Black, and she just loves flipping through that book and John Jennings' book, Black Comics.
Yeah.
She just loves going through that and diving into that. So that's the book that's near and dear to my heart. So tell everybody a little bit more about that book.
So when I was writing my first book, Black Comics, Politics of Race and Representation, my first ever book, the one that won the Eisner, that book is based off of my dissertation. And when I was doing my dissertation, I was in the basement at the Howard University library, and I'm thinking I'm just going to go down to the library and get a book that covers the history of Black people in comics, like the Black creators and their contributions. And then there was no book, like there's no book that I could just go to get a timeline of the history of Black people in comics or the contributions they made during the civil rights movement. And so after I did my dissertation, I'm like, this is like an injustice. Like all of the books I was reading were all about white superheroes and the contributions of white people. And so trace that line to the Encyclopedia of Black Comics. It's just more of me trying to document and preserve the contributions of African Americans in comics. And it's also a learning process for me, because I'm someone who didn't read comics as a little kid, right? I didn't grow up on comics like a lot of comic book fans have. So all of this, not only am I documenting and preserving Black history, I'm also learning as I go and doing something for my community.
That's awesome. Jason Richardson, he's in your book.
Yeah.
First time I met him, he was like, "I'm in this book. Look me up." So he was so honored to be in there.
Yeah, he's great.
Jason's awesome.
Shout out to Jason, by the way.
So what was the first time you remember you got into comics, you said, as an adult? And so this might not be the best question, but, because you were studying representation when you got into comics, but what was the first time you came across a character in the wild, so to speak, that you thought, this character represents me. They did this one well.
In this character represents me well. I think the problem with the media in general is that I haven't traditionally connected to a character anywhere that represents me. And of course, no character is going to completely
Right.
represent us, but there are characters that speak to some parts of our identity, or there's characters that we connect to that we say, oh man, like I'm like that is my story, right? Oh my goodness, like finally somebody understands what I'm going through. And you know, I haven't found that particular character that really like speaks to me in that way. But my favorite comic book character is Captain America, right? A white guy. But you know, I love the values that Captain America stands for, and you know, so yeah.
That's awesome. So we speaking of mainstream stuff, let's take a little Wonder Woman detour. Let's you're writing some stuff for Wonder Woman right now. Let's
Yes.
talk about how that happened and what's going on there. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was really fun. I'm really honored to even have been able to touch Wonder Woman in any way, and hopefully I get to write Wonder Woman a lot more going forward. But yeah, my story is coming out next month in November. It's in the Wonder Woman Black and Gold #6 issue. And not only did I get to write Wonder Woman, but my story also has the Black Wonder Woman Nubia in it. So I got to write both Wonder Womans, which is just like so crazy and amazing. And I think it's a really good story, but of course I'm biased, so hopefully your viewers will hit me up and let me know what they think.
Hopefully. I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's good.
I think it's really good. I think it's one of my best, definitely.
So other than Wonder Woman, what other projects do you have going on right now?
So I did do a story in a book called Wonderful Women of the World for DC that came out last month. And I'm doing something with DMC, right? DMC #4 is coming out you know, down the line. So I'm doing something with the DMC, which I'm really, really excited about. And yeah, so I'm also writing another like unrelated to comics book, because you know I'm a writer, so
Yeah.
I just write. So yeah, we got some projects in the pipeline, and hopefully more Wonder Woman.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of writing, you have a novel called Nina's Whisper that you turned into a graphic novel.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because that is one of the unique books that again speaks to representation. It's one of the aspects of representation that's far too often not represented, particularly in comics. So let's tell everybody about the premise of it, and then get a little bit into how where'd that story come from?
Yeah, thanks for asking me about that. So Nina's Whisper is a same-sex domestic abuse story because, you know, I consider myself an image activism, and I'm trying to tell stories that are not told, right? We talk about representation. There's a lot of different types of family structures and people and situations that, you know, unfortunately those stories don't get told when we get down to the nuance of representation and stuff. So when we think about domestic abuse, we always think about a man abusing a woman, right? But there's actually research that shows that in the LGBT community, domestic abuse is actually higher than abuse in heterosexual relationships. And so yeah, the story is about same-sex domestic abuse. I self-published the novel, and then I did a graphic narrative version of the book. And I wanted to self-publish it because I like to learn and I like to teach people what I learn. So now I can speak right about the differences between publishing traditionally and self-publishing, because all of my books have been published by publishers with the exception of Nina's Whisper. So anything I learn, I like to be able to teach people.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk. You have courses that people can sign up to take on Udemy, I think, right?
Yes. So yeah, I have courses on Teachable, which is basically Teachable is your own platform, right? And a comic book and graphic novel script writing course. And then I have a comic book and graphic novel script writing course for shorter stories. So if you want to know how to tell short stories like 6 to 9 pages, which are tough to do, right? To tell a story from start, middle, and end, and wrap it up in a nice bow in only 9 pages. So yeah, check out the courses. I would definitely prefer people to check out the courses on my Teachable site, and you can get there through any of my social media platforms.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. I know some people that are constantly looking for new creators are always looking for resources, right? And so
Yes.
we get emails, Instagram messages, Facebook messages all the time asking us. And so having people to refer them to is great. And so
Yes. Yes.
definitely adding your courses to our list of resources.
Please do. That'd be wonderful. And the course is getting great reviews. I get about on Udemy, I get about 60 people in there a month
Oh,
and
wow.
great reviews. Yeah, 4.6 out of 5. So it's a great course. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. Very good. And so speaking of ways to support artists, I also want to give your Patreon a shout out because you have a
Thank
Patreon.
you.
No problem. So tell everybody a little, because I have loved your Patreon. I'm a member, and so I've loved the perks and the rewards that you send out. Tell everybody a little bit about your Patreon.
And I appreciate you for sticking it out with me. But so my Patreon has actually been revamped recently, so it's a lot better. So the highest tier is $50 a month, but that gets you 2-hour coaching calls
That
with
was
me.
perfect timing.
Yeah, I know, right?
$50.
Right? The universe is working with me. Yes, when you work with the universe, it works with you. Shout out to the secret app that sends you that money signal every night to remind you to manifest. But yeah, so the top tier is $50 a month, and that's limited. I only let a certain number of people enter into that tier because you get a 2-hour coaching call with me every month, and we can either go over your projects and I can give you feedback and review of your projects, or I can take you through sort of like a curriculum, a theme curriculum, and set up different themes for you every month. And we can do that for 2 hours every month. So you get access to me like that. The middle tier, you just get copies of my books when they come out, autographed, delivered right to your door. And it has some other perks. Like I like to support creatives with grants and resources, because a lot of creatives, we fall into the starving artist trope where it's like we want to do something, so we're funding things out of our pocket, and because we want to do it, we want it to be out in the world, but we don't have to do that. There's so many resources out there that can support us financially. And so on my Patreon monthly, I try to send out 5 or 6 grant resources that people can apply to. But I also do that on my free mailing list as well. I just don't send out as many of those opportunities. So you get lots of perks like that on the Patreon. So yeah, please go and check it out.
Yeah, it's been well worth it just for the books alone. I mean, well worth it. So
yeah.
And again, those grants, I've looked at the grants when you send them out. There's some great opportunities there.
Yeah, and I appreciate the feedback, because I do have people that message me and say, hey, I've been applying to the grants that you've been sending. And yes, like, and some of them you can apply to really quickly. Like some of them don't have an extensive application process. Others do. And like some of the grants are for like $15,000. Some of them are for less. So instead of you having to go around the internet for grants and resources, and I also send out just opportunities, like here are some things that can help you with entrepreneurship in the newsletter as well.
Awesome. That's really cool. Really, really cool. So you do a lot to help support other creators. Who are some creators that you think people should really be following right now and checking out?
I was really impressed by the artwork of Jamal Campbell on my Wonder Woman issue. It's beautiful. It's amazing. So if you're not familiar with Jamal, please go check out his work. It's like genius level artwork. I always love Amy Chu, right? She's just a great resource in the comics industry, but also the work she's doing is amazing. Of course, John Jennings, right? He comes from the academic perspective, but the creative perspective. And I also always love the work of Joel Christian Gill as well, because he does that kind of Black historical comic work, which a lot of writers are starting to do now, right? They're starting the people that used to do the superhero, the people that used to just do the superhero stuff are now doing like books on like the Black Panther Party and Frederick Douglass and stuff like that. So I think that's really amazing, and I would like to think I did have a part to play in showing people that comics can be used for something really socially relevant and conscious.
Yeah, it's amazing some of the really cool graphic novels coming down the line that speak to, like I said, my daughter Maya, I just hand her a graphic novel and she learns so much better in that format. So I can hand her books on historical things that happen.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? I love it.
So
Like my
if you,
son's name, his name is Che, C-H-E, and I have the graphic novel about Che Guevara up here. He's not ready for it yet because he's only 4, but it's there. So when he's ready, we're going to be reading about Che Guevara.
he's your son. He's not reading it yet. I mean, come on.
I know, right? I'm slacking over here. Professor Howard is slacking.
That's awesome. That I don't think I have that one. I'll have to pick that one up because that sounds like a good one too.
Yeah.
So new comic creators a lot of times watch the show. Like I said, you have lots of resources. If you could offer one piece of actionable advice for a new comic creator, what would it be? They have an idea in their head, they want to get it out into the world. What piece of advice would you give them? That doesn't give too much away from your courses.
You know what the piece of advice is? To send an email. And I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes, and I posted this on my Twitter the other day, sometimes the difference between you and the other creator is that they were not scared to send an email to a person that you thought would never work with you. So my book right here, Encyclopedia of Black Comics, it has a foreword by Henry Louis Gates, the Henry Louis Gates. And the reason why that happened is because I just sent them an email. So sometimes you got to get out of your own way and just send an email, right? You might look up to this comic creator. You might think they would never respond to your email, but actually they might, but you never know unless you send that email.
I have totally found that when working with people. When I first started doing this, I thought, nobody's ever going to let me talk to them. Nobody's ever going to let me interview them. But you're right that if you just send an email, you're kind of surprised by how many people are just like, sure, like, yeah, that works.
It's crazy. And some of these people that you think are like super celebrities or like same thing for this book, Why Wakanda Matters. It has a foreword by Philip Boutte Jr. He's actually can
you see my copy right back there? Right.
What'd you say? Oh,
Can you see my copy?
Philip Boutte Jr. He actually did the costume design work for the film Black Panther, and he wrote the foreword. And
that's amazing.
I've never met him. I just sent them an email. You'd be amazed.
Yeah, that's really good advice. That's really good advice because so many people out there are scared and think they have to work up to getting a certain level. And I mean, maybe you do, but also maybe you don't. You don't know until you send that email. So
Right. Figure out who you want to work with. Figure out somebody that might be a step ahead of you, and tell them how you can support them. Right. So, instead of asking them for something, tell them how you can support them. Right.
I love it. Other than buying stuff, which I know every creator wants their stuff sold. What's some of your advice for how people can support creatives?
Well, from the creative's perspective, make sure you're giving people value, right? You make money by giving people value, right? Being of service to people in some way, right? So, like I said, I get like 60 people a month in that comic book and graphic novel script writing course. I made a course that is pretty comprehensive and is giving people value at a really low price. And so I think from the creative perspective, that's where I would give the advice to. But for the customer, I mean, you can support your favorite creatives by just buying their content. If nobody's buying, especially for those people that are publishing with publishers, if you're not buying our stuff, we're not going to get the opportunity. So sometimes we have fans that really like our work, but they actually don't buy our stuff. But it doesn't mean that they don't like our stuff. But the best way to show us that you like our stuff is to actually buy our stuff and talk about us on social media, right? When you buy that book, post it on social media, tag us, right? I think those two things are the most important, right? Supporting us by buying our stuff and then letting your network know, right? People only know about you when you share us with your network.
Very good. Very good. Well, tell us how people can specifically follow you and support you, Dr. Howard.
So Dr. Sheena Howard everywhere. My website, you can get to it through SheenaCHoward.com or Dr. Sheena C. Howard. Same thing for Twitter, Instagram. I've been working on my Instagram, so I'm posting a lot on Instagram now. I spend a lot of time because I'm a writer, so Twitter was my thing.
That makes
but
sense.
My creative coach is like, no, the young people are on Instagram, so you need to go over to Instagram. So my Instagram is pretty good now. So is my TikTok. So yeah, find me on the socials and hit me up.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you, again, I just want to give another plug for your Patreon. It's a great thing. And that 2 hours a month that you're talking about for that $50 level, if you are looking to get into comics or writing or whatever, that's a really good investment in your future and helps Dr. Howard out too. So yeah,
Yes.
I can't, and I'm sure people can get there through your social media and off of your website.
Yes, my link tree, all of that. If you go to my Instagram, my link tree will be there. You'll be linked out to everything. Also, hey, I'm always looking for feedback. Tell me what you want me to create. Tell me what you want me to help you with. Tell me what courses you want me to create so I can support you. And right now, I'm actually looking for feedback on my Patreon tiers. So if you go to my Instagram, you'll see a post there. I'm giving away a $25 Amazon gift card. So go ahead and click on that, enter to win the $25 Amazon gift card. Literally, all you have to do is look at my Patreon tiers and give me feedback on them.
Fantastic. Yeah. Dr. Howard, thank you for being here tonight. It was a pleasure to get to talk to you. I'm so excited that we were here and we're able to talk for a little bit. We're going to transition in just a minute to the panel, but I just wanted to tell you goodbye before we move off. And again, thank you, and tell everybody out there, go follow Dr. Howard, Dr. Sheena Howard. If you don't already, follow her and just pay attention to what she's doing, but also support her, like she said.
Yeah. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll talk to you later. All right. I always like getting to talk to people who I admire greatly. And so it was an honor to have Dr. Howard here. We're going to shift to a slightly different format now. We're going to have a panel discussion in just a minute. I do want to invite somebody on that I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, and we're going to figure that out here in just a minute. Steve is a member of the ICD team. He writes reviews and also has a current project out. So I'm going to pop him on first. Steve, how in the world are you?
I'm doing good. How about you, Brett?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. How do you say your last name?
Kurbitz.
I would have right. I never get names right.
No, don't worry. Everyone mispronounces my name. I've heard Kurbitz, like, don't worry. It's one. Not a lot of people get it right, but it's either.
My last name is Hillesheim, so I'm right there with you, man. Nobody ever gets it right.
Yeah.
So, before we welcome on some other people here in a few minutes, because we are running actually a couple minutes early, I want to give you the chance to talk about your current project that's on Kickstarter. Now, I do want to say you're going to be back on, I think, next week, right? When we talk about monsters in indie comics. But hold on, I'm pulling something up here. But we wanted to have you on this week too, because we had the opportunity to. So I am pulling up your Kickstarter right now. We'll share the link, but tell us about the current Kickstarter.
Okay, so Rivenport has been a passion project of mine, a book I've been working on for the past couple of years. It's got a lot of influences. The main ones are like D&D style fantasy books, because I'm a big fan of Jim Zub's D&D and Pathfinder books. Die by Kieran Gillian is one of my favorite books coming out right now. And even like the Adventure Zone books with the Elroys, but like where Rivenport kind of twists that is that Rivenport is a city in a fantasy world that's kind of reached its version of the Industrial Revolution. So it's got a lot of those steampunk influences in there too. And what it is it's a story about a young pickpocket who finds out that there's a contract on the life of the man who killed his mother and father right in front of him when he was a child. And he has to decide if he's going to move up in the criminal underworld from being somebody who just does like petty larceny and stuff like that to being an actual like cold-blooded killer. And it's just like, imagine a world like the one from Gangs of New York, but there's also monsters, magic, people with special abilities. You know, Leonard Finch, that's the name of our protagonist. He's just like your normal human rogue. He's really quick, really cunning, and he's going up against people like one of the people he goes up against owns like an exotic monster fighting ring.
Amazing.
And like the man who killed his father has he can make his skin as hard as steel and make himself super dense. This scene here that you're scrolling through, we chose this one as the preview because this is like a typical night in Finch's life. He robs this wizard for his spell reagents. I wonder if I'm saying that right.
You can say it however you want. It's your book.
Yeah. But basically, like the components he uses for casting spells.
Okay.
But as you can see, Finch is only threatening him with the butter knife. The plan was that he would steal the stuff before the wizard ever came back. And, you know, and you find out later that he has a good reason for stealing those spell components. And one of the things I wanted to do with this project is I really like the moral ambiguity of like gangsters that have a code, like, you know, like Sons of Anarchy, Goodfellas, you know, even once again, Gangs of New York. It's like these people who, you know, maybe they're what we would call bad, but they still have their own code of honor and ethics in place where they draw the line on what they'll do, you know. And yeah, it's Ryan Tavares does the art. I gotta give a big shout out to him. He's had other successful Kickstarters with his name. He Nomads, the book he put out himself last year, that's been really popular with a lot of people. TavaresArt.com if you want to check out his work.
Ryan is an amazing artist, and his work on this book seems top notch again.
Yeah, because a lot of this Victorian, like the Victorian era, is known for like its elegance and how complicated its designs are. Like when you were looking at this Kickstarter, you scrolled past like an Art Nouveau print, and like he really tackled the challenges that came with designing this world well. But you can see Nomads, he makes an interesting decision to take Nomads, which is a post-apocalyptic world where humans have reverted to living in tribes and fighting each other, but instead of everything being like dark and gray and brown, it's just the most vibrant technicolor stuff you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, there's some amazing spreads in Nomads.
Yeah,
amazing.
But he's also tackled a Hitchcock style comic, and when he made Game of Doubles with Jonathan Thompson, he's worked on a Motor City Mo with the Three Wise Men, and like, I don't know, I'm honored to be working with him. We've been friends for a while, but he's not just my buddy who can draw. Like, you can tell, like, this guy, I think he's right on the cusp of being really big. I would put him up against like Trad Moore or Daniel Warren Johnson or any of those guys.
Yeah, Ryan's amazing. So I dropped the link in the chat on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching on the ICD channels, you can click that link and you can go support this Kickstarter. Some great tiers going on there. For as little as $3, you can get a digital. So there's no reason. I mean, again, if you're intrigued by the story, it's the D&D aspects, go support this Kickstarter. And I'll drop the links again before we get off the show and post in the show notes for the podcast listeners. No problem. Everybody go support Rivenport. You can just search it on Kickstarter, Rivenport, and it will come right up, one word. Or I'm sure it's linked on all of Steve's social media profiles.
Yep.
Do you have it on your OnlyFans also, or is it just your main ones? I'm just joking.
Though, like, the OnlyFans is kept separate from everything else.
Okay, that's good to know.
You know, but my website is bitsbytesblog.com, and I'm Bits Bytes Blog pretty much on every social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you look me up and follow me, trust me, I'll be posting something that links to the Rivenport Kickstarter at least till November 15th.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, everybody go support it. I'm going to welcome a couple other people now, and then we'll get into some headlines for this evening. First up, Jason Alexander, Fogbreaker Studio. Hello, sir.
How's it going, y'all?
Going good. How are you tonight?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks for asking.
Great. No problem. I'm so glad. So Jason's also a member of the ICD team, writing reviews, and got his own thing going on with mini comic bundles and Fogbreaker Studios. So lots of cool things going on there. So welcome again. You've been on for Creator Poppin' before.
Yeah, I have. Yep.
But nice to have you on the show formally.
Yes,
and
exactly. Good to be here.
And then a staple of the ICD team for, I think, close to a year now. It was hard to believe. Malachi Bailey, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
When did we start with you and ICD? I mean, it has to be close to a year now.
I think so. Maybe December.
Yeah.
I want to say December was on the first official, session, but we were friends before that. So
yeah. I mean, kind of. I didn't like you. No, I'm just joking.
Don't have one of these people.
Oh, well, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming on. I've been wanting to kind of test out some different formats where we kind of switch in the middle of the show from an interview to maybe more panel style. So it was a great opportunity to try that. And I think Alex Orbello may join a little bit. I saw on his Instagram post, he said 9:40. That is not the time, Alex. So we may be done, but that's okay. So I'm going to, because I haven't gotten to play this in a while, here's our headlines intro. Just because I like earliest intros.
That was a fun little bop.
So first up, it is Halloween, and so CBR has an article right now, 10 spooky indie comics to read this Halloween. I love indie comics because of what they can do to explore things that traditional comics can't. And so while they have lots of great comics on this list, like Lock and Key, I can never say that because I'm bad at pronouncing names, 30 Days of Night, Baby Teeth, they have a lot of really great ones. Have you guys read any spooky stories lately in indie comics, or know of anybody that putting some out that you would recommend?
I have. Me and Aaron did quite a bit of horror in the minis. Like, they're short, but I don't know. I think horror lives awesome in short stories, because that's all we really ever need. Like, for a movie, you see the scary parts in the trailer, and the rest of the story kind of lives around it. So I love doing my horror, but I read Uzumaki this year, and that kind of changed how I created for a while. I didn't create clones, but man, I tell you what, like, if you want to do it right, like that's a pretty close example of somebody that did it right. And it's long, but you don't care, and every chapter is unsettling differently than the last, but it never stops. So I always have to go to Uzumaki whenever horror and comics comes up. There's really not many that did it much better for me anyway.
You're gonna add Alec to the stream.
Master.
Where are you at, Alec?
I made it.
You made it.
I'm home.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank you for being here. Steve, you were starting. We're talking right now, Alec. We're talking about indie horror comics, and if you've read any lately, or at any point. But Steve was just about to say something, I think.
Oh, I was just gonna agree that Junji Ito is pretty much the master of horror comics as far as I'm concerned. Like heavyweight champion, just because Uzumaki, a really solid one. Gaio, like the Death Stench of the Sea, is another one, or even just like his short one, like the Anagara Fault, I think it's called, like Mystery.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yep. I read The Hanging Balloons here recently too, and like I love the idea of putting real people in these super odd situations that you almost have to think for a second before you realize how scary it would be to see your face on a balloon with a noose on the bottom of it. Like there's levels to that, but there's levels to that for me. But it's A1. It's why I like why horror is my favorite sandbox. I love writing horror now. I've only done it for about a year and a half, but it's where I want to stamp for sure somewhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Gaia was pretty cool. I think comics honestly is one of the harder mediums to do horror in personally. I think because movies, they got the edge because there's sound effects and there's like all this other stuff that goes into like you getting immersed into like some horror, and they can get away with like adding that suspense without showing the monsters and stuff.
Right.
And so that makes it easier for them. And then even when you're reading novels, like those descriptive words by Stephen King, writing 10 pages about like the room he's in, like that helps you get scared too. But I feel like in comics, it's hard to like, I don't know. For me, it's harder to like feel that fear when I'm reading something, and I think I was thinking about it a lot lately because I just read Witches by Scott Snyder, and that was actually on that article that you mentioned. And I thought that was a really good book. And, obviously Snyder is like awesome. He's a great writer, but it was just like, I think you need to see the monster more. You can't get away with that suspense that you can get away with in those other mediums. So like, I think you really need to see it. The Walking Dead is also pretty scary, but that's like emotional stuff, Yeah. It's not like you're saying where putting those people in those situations, it was that type of thing for me with The Walking Dead.
So I don't know if he'd consider it horror or not, but David Wilburn from Broken Face Comics has a series called Plainer Jane. It's about your typical 16-year-old high school girl who also happens to be a serial killer. And it is amazing.
Typical.
It is amazing. she finds the dark web, and she's basically a sociopath, right? She just wants to kill people because that's what she wants. And she finds the dark web and starts accepting hit jobs. And so the first one goes okay, so she gets more jobs, and it's just her path. Anyway, it's good. I think he has a new Kickstarter coming up. If you don't follow Broken Face Comics, follow Broken Face Comics, and great series. Another person I like, who I think does do a good job of building suspense in short panels, especially, is Harry Nordlinger. Have you guys ever heard of him? God, he is creepy as shit. Like
Harry, what's his last name?
Nordlinger. So it's Nordlinger. We actually had him on the show last year around this time in October. But just go look at some of the stuff he posts, and actually all of his comics are free. You can read it online at vacuumdecay.com.
What is it called?
So, vacuumdecay.com.
You said
and
Vacuum Decay.
Different book.
I might have been in a couple of those in some rest stops when I was driving from North Carolina to Maine.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, anybody else have anything to add on horror? Mal, you got any horror you've been right? I know.
Well, I am usually a superhero fanatic, but something did come to my attention. So my artist Dino Agor, and I'm probably butchering his last name, so please forgive me, Dino. He's actually illustrating a Kickstarter called Zombie Deathball Mayhem. And it's about, hold on, I have the Kickstarter pulled up. It's about this girl and her fearless chihuahua, and they're fighting their way across a zombie apocalypse in search of an orthodontist. So I'm intrigued.
I love it.
You know, so I pledged. So
It's one of those things you'd need.
Right? I would say
Yeah.
so.
I love those people who are bold enough to just take concepts like that and just run with them.
It's original.
Who's the other zombie? The zombie dating.
Steve Urena.
Yeah, Steve Urena.
I love when people just go with that type of thing. It's so funny.
That's another good one. So I haven't read Zombie Date Night from Steve yet, but it's on my to read list. He sent me a copy of it. But his earlier book, Slowpokes.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
Oh, I love it. It's genetically modified sloths that move fast. And apparently, like, if sloths couldn't move fast, they'd be like these terror machines that just murder everybody.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's hilarious. Like, I first started reading it, and I actually messaged Steve. It's like, I just need to know before I keep reading, like, are you taking yourself serious here, or is this, like, funny? And he's like, no, totally funny. I was like, okay, thank God.
That's funny. That's great. Because, like, as a creator, like, you think about, like, what am I spending my time thinking about? You know, it's like, because people, like, you know how long it takes to draw something. You know how long it takes to write something. But, like, nobody takes into account the amount of time you're just sitting there thinking about it or on a walk thinking about it. So to invest that amount of time and just, like, do that into a concept where it's like, all right, guys, I got this idea. It's like these sloths, right? And then, like I props to people like Steve who go out there and do it.
Oh, yeah.
That's comics, though. Like, you could never get a budget to make that television show on a pitch.
Exactly.
You know, but you can nail it in a comic book easy, you know, if that's your thing. So I love it.
That's exactly right.
Netflix is looking for stuff. You never know.
I mean, they are.
It's true.
It goes through some pretty weird stuff.
Somebody's probably listening to this right now, like, okay, fast sloths. Okay, who do we get to do fast sloths?
I actually have another idea if anybody wants to have it. I was driving by. I live in New Hampshire, and I was just driving by this road, and on the side, I see something that's just like standing up. It's like 1.5 feet tall, and it's a woodchuck. And I tell you, that thing looked like the stupid little grizzly bear. And I think if somebody could, it was fierce, but it was awesome. It was a moment. And if somebody can run with that concept, like stupid little grizzly bear.
If Netflix is going to, be accepting pitches for different, TV shows, I thought about this one book I was reading some years ago, and it was called White Trash Zombie. And it was so different. It was so unique. And I would love to see them adapt it. But I think there was a similar show. What was that zombie show?
With
the girl with blonde hair.
Yeah, with
iZombie. Barrymore?
Yeah.
No, the one with Drew Barrymore, wasn't it?
No, not that one. That's the Santa Clarita Diet.
Oh, yeah, Diet. Yeah. Okay, iZombie.
iZombie.
Okay.
I remember there was controversy because they pretty much stole like the premise of the White Trash Zombie series, and they adapted it for their screenplay, and the screenplay was picked up. So that's why I didn't watch that show, because I didn't like it.
Damn.
And that's Mal's opinion.
That's
on
that.
Yeah, that's it.
Well,
the gavels come down.
Well, let's talk about indie comics for just a minute, in particular publishers. CBR has this article, 10 longest lasting independent comic book publishers of all time. And, basically they mean not Marvel and DC by independent.
Right.
So Eclipse is on here, IDW, who we just started being a press partner with, plug for IDW, and Indie Comics Dispatch, Gold Key Comics, Image Comics, of course. What do you think, like, there's so many people kind of getting in the game right now. What do you think it takes to be a long-term publisher in indie comics right now?
Can I just say something? Because we've talked about this before, and this is a little off topic, but we talk about like indie publishers, and we said, well, we're small press and they're big press, but we're all indie. I think that's bullshit. We should have the term to ourselves, and then we should just call them creatively independent. And
so
like,
I agree with you. So that's why if you notice, and other people can disagree with me, but I say like ICD represents small press, independent, and creator owned, because a lot of these are still creator owned books, even though they have the backing of a massive publishing house behind them.
I like that. Yeah. So I mean, I'm cool with like, we need to just like start, if we just like acknowledge, like stop acknowledging them as indie publishers and just start calling them like creatively independent or creator owned, like that's going to catch on, and we'll just let the other, like let it slide, and then eventually we'll have this all figured out.
I agree with you. Alec and I have it figured out.
Nice. Netflix can get that written down too.
Thanks, Netflix. So back to the question of being an indie publisher by Alec's definition, a smaller press publisher. What do you think you have to do to be in it for the long game right now?
I think you got to get good at like self-promotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The goal is, like what I see you doing, Malachi, like you're always, everybody who's on your social media knows where you're at. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you need to get. This is the book that needs to exist. For sure. And I think that there's really nothing better than that, because if you can do it for yourself, if you ever get somebody behind you, you'll be fine. But if you never have somebody behind you, you'll still be fine, because you'll have your base. And that's what it's for. You'll never gonna nail 100%. And so it doesn't need to be this huge machine. You just have to have the, I don't know, what is it? I guess tenacity
exactly.
To do it. You have to have the tenacity to do it and be confident in your path, because it's still not going to be the same for everybody who does it this way.
For sure.
Because right now there's just a lot of like, everyone's just throwing stuff to the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm from Michigan, so we have I guess what you'd call like a middle-sized publisher, like Source Point Press. They definitely have like, I was just at Motor City Con, they had a huge presence there. It seems like to me, to really make it, you just gotta you can't get discouraged, and because the truth is you're gonna lose money making comics for a long time before you ever start making money.
Well, to add to both of your guys' points, is you said something about like whether somebody's going to be there for you or not, you need to know how to do it. So let's say you get published by like one of the by some company, like whether it's Scout or Image or whoever, right? At the end of the day, if you need your comic to be successful, you still have to go to those cons. You still have to, put out work on your own social media and do all that stuff. So if anything, like if that's your goal, like consider this practice, and you need to learn all those steps to get to where you want to be, So I think Wingless, Malachi, you do a great job. At, like people when you get there, like you already like feeling like you got your brand. I hate to do it because like I hate corporate shit, but you really do have your brand. Like when you get it there that like you're looking at a Wingless Comics, comic or like a post. Like I know right away. Like I don't have to see your name to know it's Wingless. So that's important. And like people, and to your point, Steve, people are going to do it different ways too. Like one of my friends and one of the creators I follow a lot, JL Johnson, who does Ennead, I've talked to him and he's had a lot of success in a short period of time. Yeah, and really he did it differently than me, where he wrote like 7 issues or 9 issues, or however many he wrote before he even started putting in production. Whereas a lot of people, myself included, are just like, holy shit, I just wrote something. I need to see it like now. I need to just go. And that's not a bad way to do it either. I was definitely, a period of transition for me where I just needed to get it out and then actually figure out how to make it good afterwards. So, you're going to take different steps to get there. And I can already tell you I've lost money doing things that I'll never get back. I can tell you that I've not lost money, but I'm down money just putting it into my project in general. And if that's the type of stuff that's going to discourage you, you shouldn't be doing anything. And you don't want to be that guy. So you should just fucking stay, what was the word you said? Tenacious.
Yes,
tenacity.
Yeah, it definitely takes tenacity. But like, I'm going through learning a lot of that stuff now because, like, you know, I'm trying to push my Kickstarter on social media. I'm trying to figure out what makes the algorithm happy, because Facebook and Twitter, pretty much anything that leads you outside of a social media's ecosystem, they're gonna kill it.
Yeah.
They do not,
unless you pay for it, because that's the whole thing.
It.
They want you to pay for it.
Either.
Yeah, and I dropped, I think at this point, like $400 or $500 buying ads, and even that is just
That's
like
crazy.
Yeah. I do want to give a couple quick shout outs. Crimson Owl Comics on Instagram said, Jason, I'm assuming that's at you, Jason.
Ronnie, what's up? Yep.
Lionheart Series, who has a Kickstarter running right now, gave waves. I think they're on the show next week. They're on the show soon. I got to check. And then D. Hausner, I'm going to say. D, I just always call you D. Is watching on YouTube, and D also has an upcoming Kickstarter. You can search for D. I know on Instagram I think is D.Hausner. I hope I'm saying that right, D. And then Ben O'Grady, who was on the show last week, and is a contributor to ICD as well. Hello, gentlemen. So we were just talking about Kickstarters. Let's talk about that, because that's our next article here. I'll do it myself. The impact of crowdfunding on indie comics. This article just really gets into the impact that crowdfunding has had on comics, and how indie comics in particular, have embraced crowdfunding, and crowdfunding platforms have certainly embraced indie comics because they make a significant chunk of money off of us funding our projects through them. There's lots of talk about crowdfunding. I've seen this debate kind of going around recently of like, oh, I don't crowdfund, I self-fund, and I don't get that. What's the problem with having people buy your stuff? I don't get that. But I guess maybe the takeaway there is crowdfunding is not for everyone. But of those of you who are doing crowdfunding or have done crowdfunding, what's your take on? Do you think it's sustainable? Do you think it's here to stay, or do you think it's in this moment and then eventually we'll move past it? What's your take on crowdfunding your comic?
Keep doing it. If you're doing it, keep doing it. It's a great Kickstarter. So I launched on Amazon first, when I first did it, and I didn't really know anything about. I was just like, how do I print a book, or how do I get it out there?
For those that don't know, Alex's series is on Greek food. So keep going, Alex.
Yeah, Greek food, cosmic feedback. It's what it is. So I did it on the Amazon way first, because when you start, you're just trying to learn how to write, or you're just trying to learn how to draw. So you don't want to have to learn how to market or learn how to get somebody to print for you, or everything else that comes with the responsibility of doing a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or something. But when I did the Kickstarter in August, what you find is when you're building it, you actually get to know your project so much better. Because you have to write those things. Like if you want to write a pitch to a publisher, they want to know your summary. They want you to do it in a sentence. They want you to do it in a paragraph, and they want you to do it in a page, And so you're going to have to do all those in your Kickstarter anyway. And I'll tell you, the first time you do it is going to be way worse than the second time, and so on. So the more you can do it, the more you're going to get better at just like being able to market your series, because you're just going to understand how to do it better. Just like when you write a page, your first draft isn't going to be as good as your final draft. So I'm pretty happy with Kickstarter. You'll find that it is more expensive, but I broke down how much it cost me to put 2 issues out and a bookmark and a sticker in my package for the main tier of my my Kickstarter, and I think it was $22. I know it was $22, and it cost about like 12 or 13 ish, for me to get that to you. And that's like, without factoring in some things too. Like I was being pretty conservative about that estimate. So but I think everybody who goes on Kickstarter knows that, maybe not the first time, maybe not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know a lot of people, I think, who are still running their it's great advice to know your costs, because I see people who have run several Kickstarters and still just, they've got to be paying out of pocket to ship their stuff, and that just is insane to me.
For sure, like international shipping's probably a no-go,
Definitely these days.
So you gotta, maybe the digital is a great way to get, like, you can still get your comic to people, and that's what matters at first. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I was an accountant, so I follow those things.
Yeah, I think somebody crapping on you because you got your comics like funded through Kickstarter, it's like the same thing as when people go like, "Oh, you just went to community college." It's like, it's like, you did it how you did it. And I think one of the biggest things that stops people from getting into comics is there's very real financial barriers to making a comic, especially because I write because I can't draw. And if you want to compensate, like pencils and inks, colorist, letterer, editor, all of that costs money, especially if you're trying to pay enough people. And if you're living in America today, it's hard to pay someone a living wage when you don't make one yourself,
Right.
And like me, I'm a father for 3, and I work full time, and it still gets tough. So crowdfunding is a way that I can take my pitch and pitch it directly to an audience and say, hey, this is the book, this is what I want to make, and if you're interested in it, give me some money and I'll put it together. There's a lot of research that goes into that. Like you said, you don't want to lose your shirt realizing you have to spend $30 per book to ship it to Europe. But at the same time, like, I think removing those financial barriers to getting into the comics industry will also get a lot more of those voices that aren't heard in the comic industry into the comic industry.
Agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Gary says people turning up their noses on crowdfunding are way underestimating the achievement it is to get enough people together to hit your funding goal. Amen, Gary.
Not easy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm going through it right now.
I gotta also say, if you guys don't know who Gary Hodges is, he is the creator of Dinosaurs vs. Mars Bots.
Oh,
if you haven't read it, it's probably one of the best books that you haven't read.
All right.
Both volumes are super awesome. So if you can find a way to get it. It's so good.
I'm there.
Both books are very, very solid.
Dinosaurs versus
cool.
Mars Bots.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I just saw a post on it today. Didn't they have a different cover?
I just got my pulp cover. Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. So good. You
Cool.
can't imagine. I don't want to go into it because it'll turn into the Dinosaurs versus Mars Bot show, but check him out. Check him out on Instagram. He's a top-notch artist. He's a great writer. So check his book out if you can get your hands on it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So let's keep talking about Kickstarter as we kind of head towards the end of the show here, because we are at an hour, and don't want to go too far past an hour. But what's your guys's for those Jason? I can't remember if you've run a Kickstarter or not. I know you have the Patreon or the Buy Me a Coffee with mini comic bundles. Similar stuff, trying to get people roped in there and enough support.
Yeah, we decided to just go for it just as it was. We didn't really crowdfund it, but about halfway through, we had both agreed that if we had to do it all over again, it definitely would have been something that we crowdfunded, because it's such an awesome idea, you know, to get the comics. I got like to get the comics this size. It's like, you know, it feels like getting a pack of baseball cards. And we really could have scaled it a little bit differently. And it's, you know, everything is trial and error. And I'm super proud of how we did it because the quality is there. But definitely it would have been something that we could have tweaked a few things and offered a little bit more, you know, and it would have been more bang for your buck. You know, it might have been a bigger buck at the end of it all, but we would have got it. And it would have been, I don't know, it would have been different. But, you know, maybe next time. But definitely I have no issues with crowdfunding.
You guys are coming up at the end. Wasn't Mini Comic Bundle just for a year?
Yeah, we're on month 11 now. So month 11 should be shipping soon. And we're finishing up our last story. And then there's a few webcomics that'll be out on the site. And then
so cool.
That'll be the end of the first campaign. So
it was an amazing thing. I loved it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. We're very proud of it. Yeah. It was a blast. Like every month I'm as excited like I didn't even write them, you know. It's so nice to see them every month. But no, crowdfunding is definitely, it has its perks. You know, it's something that I definitely want to explore, like on my personal projects. And I didn't think that I would get there, but it's really the only way, because you have to take care of yourself, or you'll sink. So, you know, if you're working full time and you're trying to run a family, this has to make sense. More than just a passion project at a certain point, especially if you want eyes on it.
So what's y'all's kind of jumping off that to kind of wrap up the show? What was your most surprising thing about running a campaign, whether it's crowdfunding or another funding method? Like Malachi and I just got done running the Wingless campaign for Nightfall Part 3. And what I never realized was just how, I mean, I've helped Wingless before. So after running the first campaign and after running the ICD campaign, I realized it. But it was surprising to me just how kind of emotionally, physically, spiritually exhausted you are at the end of a campaign.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
I feel like I still haven't posted shit on Instagram since my campaign has been over. I was just like so over posting stuff on social media after that. And it's just like, I wonder how many people think I'm annoying because I'm just telling people like all the time, like, hey guys, by the way, that reminds me, like, you know, what do you know? I do have a comic on Kickstarter. I don't know if, I know that doesn't have to do with like, you know, it is sunny outside, but it's kind of the same thing.
You know where it's not sunny? In space. Support my Kickstarter.
Yeah, on the moons of Vonador. Yeah, it's dangerous over there. The sun's not shining. No, it's definitely, there's emotions with it all. I think that's not necessarily a Kickstarter thing, though. I think it's just like having it like I'm getting like mine now a little bit because I just sent out the physicals to people for my campaign. So it's like, man, I was just lit up after like I met my goal. Like, and I barely met it, but I was just like, it didn't matter because I had, you know, 86 people who were interested in reading it. And that was only like, you know, like to build a readership, it's not easy. And 86 people, like that's not one. So that's crazy. And then it's like after, it's the reflection you get afterwards, you know, like when people start to read it and you're like, okay, so there's probably things you can improve on. You want to feel that. But you also just think it's just I can't really explain it. You get a different sort of reflection after it's all out than when you're still working on it.
You exhale, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is.
I was gonna say, Steve, this is your first campaign, I believe. And so what's surprising to you about it?
I started my first campaign right when I started a new job, and it's like Alec was saying, it's like having an additional full-time job, and just on the one hand, it's really cool because it feels really good to, like, you can show people your Kickstarter page and be like, I'm serious about this. Like, this is something I've been working on for a long time. And they can see the work you put in. But there's also, like I've even had my wife just have to tell me like stop refreshing the page, stop looking.
Yeah.
You know, like this is why you're getting so anxious. It's keep refreshing
sure.
the page constantly. Like, you know.
That's Mal and I during every campaign to drive Brian Lambert insane. We're just refreshing. Oh, $2 more.
It's a freaking joy though. When you see it, you're just like, especially at like you just like haven't looked at it for a minute, you pick it up and like you like hit your next stretch goal and you're like, what? That was
sleep and you wake up and there's more money.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy. What a feeling. The other thing I'll tell people about Kickstarter, like, don't like I mentioned it earlier, like you feel like you're being annoying because you mentioned it so many times, but like you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not.
If you're not, if you're not speaking up for yourself, nobody else is going to.
Do like, because if nobody's going to be a passionate, like you need to be the first person passionate about it, and you need to be the last person passionate about it. So there's no like in between to get there. You just need to be about it every day during that campaign, and then afterwards. I think the campaigns that I see go the strongest and are still going are the ones where I'm on like update 60 from them on the Kickstarter, like, you know, because they're still pushing. And it lets everybody else know that, hey, this guy isn't slowing down and it wasn't a one-time thing. Like, especially if you're trying to do something ridiculous like me, where there's an infinite amount of issues in the future, you know, like you gotta stay with it. And if you're afraid about sounding annoying because you tell people about it, like those people aren't going to read it anyway. So
that's true. And also, and it's just me being me. If you're that quote unquote annoying, or if you think that you're doing too much and they don't like it, they still have the option of unfollowing you.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to fucking see it. I'm still gonna post it.
Yeah. Leave it up to them. Don't leave.
Every social media has a mute feature, man.
Exactly.
That annoying to you.
Well, and we mentioned the algorithm earlier. Like, I mean, Facebook, Instagram, whatever hides half of what you post anyway.
Yes,
so
they
people
Which is
are
why
seeing.
You have to post so much.
Yeah. So yeah.
Another
Any other last minute Kickstarter surprises before we wrap up?
Just eat your Wheaties. Like, I didn't kickstart, but you know, campaigning is like, I felt like Chris Rock on Head of State. You know, it's like you gotta go sometimes. You gotta keep going, even when you don't want to. So it's a marathon, you know, and I know that I had some misses, so just learn from them the next time. But if you stop, that's the end of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you the other thing that I did is I had my book done before I went on Kickstarter. And that sounds ridiculous because, like, hey, you're crowdfunding to help get your book done in a way. But, like, I was crowdfunding for my next one because for me, I'm telling people, hey, I care about this so much that I have the first 2 issues. Here they are. And so stick with me after this. And now you're helping me make the series. So
where I'm at.
Well, that's great because it gives people, they're like, hey, you know, I'm not the only one he's got a stake in this, you know, more than just like a creative endeavor or something to do to pass time. And then it also takes a burden off your shoulders of having to create as well as having to campaign and having to find a printer and having to do all these other things at the same time. So you can just make it easier on yourself.
Yep. Yeah. The more trust you build, the more you'll keep the people for your next issues if they know you're delivering. So
exactly
that counts.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight and helping to end our show. I enjoyed this. Kind of keeping it short and sweet, kind of getting to hit 2 different things tonight, an interview and a panel discussion. I loved it. Why don't we go around and just kind of plug again where people can follow you, how they can find you and support your projects. Steve, I'll let you go first since you got an active campaign.
All right. That's Rivenport on Kickstarter, Riven Port. Still going until November 15th. And then just shout out to Ryan Tavares, who does art on the book. Shout out to Casey Pierce, who did the editing on the book. She has a couple of horror books of her own, Nora and Sirius, which were good Halloween reads to check out. She's really good at what she does.
Nice.
And Bits Bytes blog if you want to find me on social media.
Fantastic. Jason?
Find me on Instagram at Fallbreaker Studios. If you want to catch up on the minis, minicomicbundles.com. Instagram is kind of where I'm springboarding a lot of whatever I'm working on. I post a lot there. I'm starting to do some short comics on there just to kind of out of the minis again. So Instagram, Fallbreaker Studios, minicomic bundles. Sorry about that. Minicomicbundles.com. But stay tuned. There's always something else cooking.
Mal, let's bump down to you.
Yes, so I can be found on Instagram, Mal the Writer. There are hyphens between each letter. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm probably more active on Facebook because on Instagram, I posted today. It was my first time in 10 days. Woohoo!
What?
So, I know. I was kind of shocked too. But on Facebook, Malachi Bailey. And of course, Wingless. So, yeah. Find me.
Alec?
Please check out the Gyro Universe. That's my graphic novel series. We just finished a Kickstarter in August. There'll be another Kickstarter in February or March, but you can read the first issue for free if you sign up for my mailing list. If you just check out the link in my bio on my Instagram, and you can also there's a 10-page preview if you don't want to do that that you can check out beforehand, and it's also on Global Comics. The second one is on Global Comics if you want to read it there. But Instagram's the best way to see anything that's coming out. Should have 2 more issues to make it 4 by the time the spring comes.
Nice. Very good. Well, everybody, thank you again for joining this evening. If you're out there watching, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the interaction in the chat this evening. Jason definitely had a fan club out there watching this evening, and we appreciate that, Jason. Guys, we're back next week, next Thursday. We got Monsters in Indie Comics. We got a panel going to be on, including Unlikely Hero Studios, who has a Miss Medusa's Monster Menagerie comic on Kickstarter right now, and they're just blowing it out of the water. I think Steve's back on. We got Lionheart series on.
Yep.
And one other person, Brian Neiford. Sorry, I can't read my screen. I'm old. And so we'll be back next week, wrapping up October to talk about Monsters in Indie Comics and end on a great Halloween note. Guys out there watching, thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening. We will catch everybody out there watching next time.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for having us, Brett.